And we're live. Well, welcome to the Eat Well, Move Well radio show. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. And welcome to you, Daniel Winkler, all the way from USA. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I look forward to speaking with you about things.
Look, you're a true gentleman. I really appreciate the time you spent organizing this show. I know you're super busy, and the audience is going to love to hear why. And I'm really honored to watch your success. But I've never had a master bladesmith on the show, and I love those titles. So it's really interesting learning from you.
Well, it's been an interesting job. I tell you, I started a long time ago, and it's rolled along very well.
31 years, is that how long you've been making blades for?
I went full time making knives in 1988, and so yeah, I guess that's getting pretty close. So I did it part time as a hobby sort of business from the mid 1970s to 88, when we felt comfortable going into it full time.
I've got had a lot of different jobs, and the reason I'm connecting with you really is through the Special Forces career I had. But my first full-time job was a blacksmith. We made leaf springs for cars back in my small town in New Zealand.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I've used a lot of leaf springs for knives over the years.
Yeah, it's a different job. I loved it. It was so, I'm going to say manly, but it's you start from one thing to the end. You go through creative process. Your knives, and I'm just painting the picture for the listeners, and then going to dive into you a bit more. You know, your knives have been featured on so many different avenues, movies. We got Last of the Mohicans, Zero Dark 30, Suicide Squad. How did that sort of occur? Because that's a very different. It's really coming to the limelight, isn't it?
Yeah, we've been really fortunate as far as our publicity side goes. It's not necessarily been what our drive was to get into those films and publications. We've been very fortunate with knife and gun magazines too, and it all helps with our journey and our purpose of building very purpose driven high performance equipment. So everything that falls in together like that helps to build it and makes us, Winkler Knives is more than just me now. And it's grown quite a bit, and we have a much larger reach than I would have ever expected.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. So how I just again painted that picture, then we're going to really go back into where you started and so on. But this is how I heard of you. For the people that aren't watching, just listening, this is a knife called the Dynamis Knife from a Special Forces operator, Don Raso, and this was brilliant. I just love the blade you've made here. Really, really interesting. That looks like a really good collaboration with Dom.
Yeah, I met Dom back years ago when he was still an active duty naval special warfare operator. And I was working on a project with him and some of his other teammates, actually multiple projects. And so we got to know Dom very well, and he stayed very close member, almost like a member of the family. And his family and our family are, stay in communication both on a business and personal level. So it's been a real honor to be able to work with him, and that particular blade, all the Dynamis blades that we make for him now are primarily Dom's designs that we execute based on his wishes and needs, and then of course I'll have impact into how we go about it and details to make it a little more functioning and comfortable. And so it's been great working with him and a lot of other from that community too. We do a lot of other collaborations for those gentlemen.
We're definitely going to get into the where you're at now. I'd like to find out, what got you into knife making and starting your journey. What was the start off point? there, Daniel?
Well, the startup point was when I was in high school, uh, and I had a great desire to be outdoors. And with my father, we would go hunting and fishing, and so I became acquainted with the outdoor equipment, which of course included knives and hatchets and firearms, and every fishing rods, everything that went along with that. So while I was in my later years in high school, the mid 70s, I started developing an interest in shooting black powder firearms. And to do that, I also wanted to outfit myself with the proper accessories, knives and tomahawks, powder horns, shooting bags, clothing, moccasins, all that. So I started doing research and learning to make these things. Pretty much self-taught, other than the training I did get through the school's industrial arts and shop programs. Back in the 70s, I made knives as school shop projects. You can make a knife in school back in those days, which I did. And from there, I started going to some shooting matches and some events, rotating around these black powder events. And so, okay, sorry about that. A note was just giving. And so I started making more of these little patch knives and knives that I made as trade blanket items that I could sell to help pay for gas money or prizes for shooting matches. And it was accepted very well, and I got more and more requests to make more. So we did that. I did that pretty much as a part-time hobby business until 1988, when I took the leap into knife making full-time as a full one-of-a-kind custom maker. Also at that time, I began working with currently my wife. She wasn't then, but she is now. And she did some really fantastic leather sheaths in a early American, Native American style. And the knives and the tomahawks I did also fit within that. And so it went very well. And we had a long, successful career in the truly custom knife making community, getting into very much collector market, to where most of what we were making were going into collections and safes and displays and not actually being used, which I was disappointed at that, because I wanted to make them better for use. But we still strove to make as high performance knives as we could, and even getting into cutting competitions, which really did help advance my knowledge in blade geometry and heat treating, to the point to where high performance cutlery was absolutely necessary. And so we roll that into everything that we're doing.
That's really interesting. You've almost jumped in right at the top tier. You've gone from high school and trading to right now I'm going to be at that very, very high end. And back in the day, because I mean, I'm of that generation as well, there wasn't a lot of knowledge around then. You were self-taught. You really would have been almost a one of a kind then. Where were you learning from? I mean, I learned a lot of my stuff. Japan was the blade sort of king, as it were. But where were you learning your craft from?
Well, I did a lot of reading on blacksmithing, and then some I could on simple blade heat treating, and I gained some knowledge just by actually jumping in and doing it. But then when I started getting into the custom knife end of it, and advanced through the buckskinner sort of group into the more knife directed individuals, I also learned there were other people making knives. And so I met some of these gentlemen like Steve Schwarzer, and we shared information, and he knew a lot about a lot of things and was generous and shared that knowledge with me, that helped advance my knowledge and made my knives better and higher performance. And then I shared with him and with other people the things that I had learned. So generally speaking, the custom knife industry is very open and very helpful to each other. And the organizations like the American Bladesmith Society are very dedicated into teaching and training, and everybody working together to improve their craft. And so I was able to gather this information and expand on it. And And even though the knives that we're making now through Winkler Knives are not hand forged and done one at a time, one of a kind, I still employ the techniques and the procedures and the materials that I learned as a custom maker and incorporate that into our manufactured pieces. So we actually, because now I have more resources to improve, because I have a larger reach, we actually make better performing knives probably than I ever was able to do on my own as a one-man, two-person shop. So it's been helpful, but I've utilized that knowledge throughout all of our manufacturing processes. And so as we advance and improve our methods, we do it in a way that never compromises the overall quality and performance of the knives. We only change things that make our operations safer, more consistent, and higher performance.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, just from my personal experience with the Dynamis blade, the quality is phenomenal. And I had to really step up my sharpening game because this thing was very, very tough steel.
Well, your first sharpening is going to be the hardest one, because you're going to be going from whatever angle we initially set up on it to your own angle that you can do repetitively. So that first time at sharpening is going to take a while. And after that, it should come back up pretty easily once, as long as you keep your same angles that you grind it to through your own sharpening.
So moving on from that process, you know, you're really into the limelight this decade, or in the last sort of 10 years, as you said, with naval spec warfare. The latest one I'm aware of, working with some of the guys that are on the show, the GBRS crew, DJ Shipley and Cole Flackler, and their blades are gone like that. Literally, they're like hen's teeth. What were they like to work with, collaborating with the GBRS crew?
Yeah, they're great too. And in fact, I worked with DJ and those guys again while they were still active duty in their profession. And then as they worked out into a more civilian lifestyle, their knowledge and their wanting to do training and provide equipment just flowed into, again, we can continue working together. So yeah, we're very fortunate on these co-branded products like Dynamis and GBRS, and put our name along with theirs, because we've been fortunate to having built a very good reputation for Winkler knives. And these gentlemen have built their professional reputations on the lives that they've led and their knowledge of equipment. And it just really works out well for everybody. And I'm glad that the sales on all this stuff is going so well. I mean, we can't keep up with it. And we've had to, for now, because our order volume is at such a high level, we're only doing the collaborative pieces with people that we have known and worked with for years. I have a very long list of people waiting for me to work with them on developing and manufacture their custom manufacturing projects, and hopefully we'll get to again. But right now, with our own deliveries on our own products running out about 5 to 6 months, it's a little hard to work new products in. But we're doing some expansions in our manufacturing processes right now that should in effect double our capacities, which will allow us to both reduce delivery times for our own products and for other collaborative projects that we do, and hopefully bring in some new custom manufacturing for other individuals that are waiting right now and be able to produce it within a reasonable period of time. It takes a while to do it because, again, we don't compromise on our methods and we don't contract out any of our processes. So we do it all here in-house because we want to be sure we are under control of every aspect of the process, from cutting out the blanks to packing it in the box and shipping it out the door. We handle it all right here in-house. with a few exceptions on some specialty steels for a few specific projects we do that I do rely on more complicated heat treating methods that I do have to contract out to reputable sources.
And I guess that paints the picture now. Hopefully I've done Winkler knives justice. It speaks to the quality of your work. And that's why I tried to run you through that journey, run the listener through the journey before you started to hear, because in special operations, we only choose the best and we're very discriminatory. And your blades, as you said, working with Dom back when he was in active service, and DJ Shipley and so on, these guys are using your blades because they need them to save lives or take lives. They're the best tool for the job.
Well, it's true. And our primary goal is when we realized that the people we were making knives and hatchets for could very literally put their life on the line based on the quality of that piece of equipment, we definitely make a conscious effort to assure that we don't fail them, because they certainly do not fail us. So we have to be sure we make products that are up to their standards, and that's a pretty high standard.
Absolutely, because we don't have our time's measured in milliseconds and seconds. We've got the contingencies, but if one thing goes wrong, it makes our life harder on the day, and we've got to work with those secondary and tertiary options. I'd like to perhaps chat about some of the more or less mainstream sort of blades you do. I mean, maybe I've got a lot of different listeners, a lot of diverse people, but maybe if they're thinking about knives, you know, you're doing the tomahawk, and you've also had the Dynamis flathead. That's a very different sort of blade to make than just a normal straight knife or so on. And they're very, very popular, in particular because of the Jack Carr series and books with your blades. So could you talk to the tomahawks, the axes that you make, and then maybe we can move on to the Dynamis flathead as well?
Yeah. Well, the tomahawks were actually, the hatchets were our first project that we worked on with the special operations community. Back during the first Gulf War, I was contacted by a member of the Naval Special Warfare community to help with the design and development of a combination combat breaching hatchet that was very strong, very capable, easy to carry, easy to access. And so I worked with this gentleman, and we developed this hatchet for his squadron. And they really liked it, and they really wanted them, but there was no money to pay for it. And so we only did the one. And this gentleman carried it during all of his deployments during the first Gulf War as a tier 1 operator with the Navy, the U.S. Navy. And then afterwards, he resigned from the military, but then he went back in the Army Special Operations community after 9/11. And so he still had this hatchet that he had carried on all these previous deployments. And so he was carrying it on with his new squadron, his new team, and they liked it. And so I hand forged 18 more, very similar to what I made for him, because I was still a one-man knife shop with Karen doing the sheaths at that time. And so we hand forged 18 more, and they went to his direct team members, which were doing some crossover training with his former team in the Navy Special Warfare. And they said, we really do need these. And they wanted like 40 of them. I couldn't do 40. It was too overwhelming. So actually that was the start of our manufacturing business, because initially I was going to help with the design development, and then we were going to contract out for the manufacturing to somebody that can handle the larger volumes. But what I learned in this process and trying to go that direction was other manufacturers and other makers and contractors have their way of doing things, and they want to do it their way because they're comfortable with it, and they wouldn't do it the way that I insisted it had to be done based on my knowledge of high performance cutlery. And so Karen and I had a discussion about it and said, okay, listen, if we're going to go in this direction and work with these men that literally are going to be using and putting their life on the line with our equipment, we're going to do it right. And so we kind of eased out of the custom business and eased into the manufacturing business very slowly at first with part-time help and employees, bought equipment, kept our quality standards up as best we could in performance. And it just really took off. And then the word of mouth through the military community and special operations world that they live in took us all over the world. In fact, some of the projects we did for Australian SAS. And so we worked with some of those gentlemen on some specialty projects for them. And it just really mushroomed as we were going. It got bigger and bigger. And so we can only grow so fast. So it took us a while to catch up, and then we're behind again and catch up and behind again. And so we're always trying to increase our production methods into more efficient operations. And so, you know, we made advancements. Instead of using a bandsaw to cut out blanks, we use a water jet now. And we have, you know, multiple salt pots for our heat treating, because that's the best performance with the steels that I get the highest performance out of. And it really is just continue to grow and get more and more. But our ability to grow with the demand is behind it. We can't supply everybody, and we've had to make some tough decisions and drop some customers and projects, and to concentrate on the ones that we initially set up for. Now back to another related question with Dynamis tactical flathead. Earlier, before we made that for Dom and his crew, we were cutting out the water jet steel blanks, and there was a lot of wasted steel between the hatchets. Right. And so I thought, well, we need to make something to utilize this steel. And so I'd been watching a TV show called The Walking Dead, and I thought, well, gee, I ought to make a walker spike. You know, it's kind of cool. People like that kind of thing. I don't know if anybody will want one. And so we cut out a bunch of them, and we did leather handle wraps and made them, and they got really, really popular. So much so that we couldn't cut enough out of the wasted areas in the other cuts anymore. And we had to cut full sheets of steel out of them. And then Dom came in and wanted his tactical flathead. So we changed the head to a screwdriver for him and made them for several years. And then when our backlog got so bad, we realized that where our bottlenecks were and what was preventing us from making knives and hatchets for some of the professional communities was we were spending so much time on these very small, detailed accessory products like the flathead, and it took just as much time in our bottlenecks to make them as it did, you know, the hatchet or the full-size knife. So we had to make the difficult decision to stop manufacturing them for a while. We're just now getting ready to get back into it because we've increased some of our methods to where we can justify it again. So tell your listeners to keep their eyes open, watch out on the website, and sign up for our newsletter, and we'll do our early releases through the newsletter, but they're coming back in a slightly different version.
Oh, beautiful. And you absolutely have customer loyalty. It's phenomenal. I joined the Facebook group, and actually I sent a fireman's t-shirt over to a former somebody that worked with you as well. He does a lot with the fireman's axes. I believe he's in Oregon.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a lot of great connections out there, and it's working with these people has been a real honor.
Your customer loyalty is phenomenal. The group is wow, they love your work, so they'll be very happy to hear that. Those things are very rare, and those again, painting the picture for the listener, rather than a blade, it's essentially a leather wrapped long spike that's a screwdriver. And I can just imagine if I had that on my person operationally, it would have got so much use, because you pull the blade out to do a digging task or some other thing. It's the last thing you want to use it for. So that flathead would be absolutely brilliant. So Dom was very clever getting that. Yeah,
well, we've done a lot of those, and a lot of law enforcement agencies, military have made it part of their kits, and it's a handy tool to have around for prying and personal protection, and like you say, digging, and a variety of tools. And it's not so expensive that you have to worry so much about it, like, you know, digging with a $400 knife in the dirt, knowing that's going to really damage the edge, is a little harder choice to make, but that's not so much.
Now, you've spoken about quality, and I've done my research, and, you know, I'm obviously a happy customer, a fan, but, you know, for the listeners, these knives, that if you YouTube Daniel Winkler knives, you're going to see you punching through the bonnets of cars, punching through, you know, metal. These things are phenomenally strong. That was your craft for so, or is your craft for so many years. But now we've got the modern world, Kydex. That's really changed things. Was that a big step to get into making quality Kydex sheaths for your knives and tools?
Well, something else that I learned early on in this is, you know, the worst piece of gear in your kit is the one that stays on the shelf when you go out in the field. And sometimes that would happen because it didn't have a proper carry system. And so we put a tremendous amount of effort into our carry systems for both the hatchets, the knives, the picks, everything that we do, because it has to integrate with people's gear, has to integrate with what they carry and what they're using. So we take that very seriously. Kydex is a great material. Kydex, Boltron, we use both. And they're basically the same in how you form them and use them. And even with our sheaths that are leather, they have that inner lining. They have an inner holster lining, then the thermoforming plastic with the leather on the outside. So you get the fit quality and the fit for each individual piece by forming that sheath to that knife. That's what we do with almost everything we make. The actual sheath you get was formed to that knife, not a form that should fit in, because all of our shaping operations are done by hand. And so there's going to be slight variations. So we form each sheath to each knife, and that makes them where they do fit properly. They do work like they're supposed to. And so the Kydex is a good step for us, and very functional, and we can handle the manufacturing of it here on all of it we could, but we actually do. That's one thing we do farm out. The base on our sheath that has the leather covering, we designed it and developed it, but we found another manufacturer that makes that flat before we form it, the sheath body. And then we do all the assemblies and all, because they did a much better, cleaner job than we could. I was having trouble setting up sewing machines and clicker presses and things. We were very limited in shop space at the time. And this company, Gould & Goodrich, does a phenomenal job for us. And so they actually do the production for us on the leather sheaths, but then we get them here, form them, trim them, and put all the accessories on them here.
Yeah, they really are. They're not only brutally functional, which I demonstrated before, and you jump on YouTube if you're listening, great stuff, but absolutely beautiful pieces, and the leatherwork is great. I think I'll just touch on back to the movies, and then what I've got a list of questions from the fans, and these are really going to be fun. Last of the Mohicans, did you design all the blades for that show, for that movie?
No, I've neither designed nor made them all. That was a major production. There were hundreds and hundreds of knives and hatchets and tomahawks in that film. What I did is I was making period style pieces when we found out that they were doing a remake of that movie. Luckily, it was very close to the area where we live. We also live in Western North Carolina, where it was filmed. And so we were actually doing a custom craft show at the Biltmore Estate. And so that's in Asheville. And so while we were there, we looked up the production offices for Mohicans, took the knives that we brought to that show to show them, to see, man, maybe they can use something. And they immediately set up a meeting with Karen and myself and director Michael Mann and the props master Ron Downing and several others of the people that involved in the production. and they looked at what we did. And so we started working with them immediately on developing knives and tomahawks for principal characters. So what I would do, and we went through probably 8 weeks of production meetings, one a week, where the director, Michael Mann, would give me instructions on what he wanted to see. And then I would go home, make it, and come back the next week. And where the designs came from were actual historic variations, like the knife Daniel Day-Lewis carries came from Fort Niagara, the blade shape, and the tomahawk Magua uses, which I made, was in a museum at Fort Meigs, and they sent me this actual tomahawk to use as a guide to create one that was very similar, a bit larger for stage presence, and but very few other changes. And so we made them and we antiqued them to where they looked old and used and worn. And so we ended up doing a lot of the principal character knives and tomahawks. And then there were other makers that were involved too. Randall King did some of the same thing. I think he was actually hired by their props department. Besides making some of the principal character pieces, he also did a lot of background models that they use that you never saw up close. So it was a big undertaking, but quite an exciting project. We were fortunate enough to go on location a lot when they were doing the filming, and advise on some of the other projects like the War Club and some of the clothing and setups and other items that we may not have made, but we did have a bit of a say in some of the design elements.
Yeah, for a creative person like yourself, it must have been like a wonderland, really, because you've done it by yourself, collaborating with people and learning, but then suddenly you get thrown into this, hey, I want to create this and want to also recreate these things. So it would have been really fulfilling for you. I mean, getting that museum piece and being able to work off that.
Yeah, that was quite exciting, and they were very protective of it. I had to call in every day and say, "Yeah, it's okay. I haven't broken anything." So, but it was all good. And working with that film and the production and seeing how it all came together is quite exciting and creative. And you can see firsthand why movies are so expensive to make, because the attention to detail and setup and sets and costuming and training and setting up scenes was just, a tremendous undertaking that was very informative and very exciting.
Well, thank you for being so forthcoming about the journey of Winkler Knives, your special operations work, because I know that you don't speak to it so often. So it's been really, really interesting learning and sharing your story there. These questions are from are posted in the Winkler Knives group. Like I say, customer loyalty is through the roof. And so these guys are throwing up a whole bunch of really cool questions that I'd like to run you through if I can.
Sure.
I'll start off. What's the design you're most proud of?
That varies day to day and job to job. People say, "What's your favorite knife that you made, or tomahawk or axe?" And I have to say, well, it depends on what I'm going to be doing with it on that day. When I do a design and development, I work on the primary use of that tool as a first and primary objective. And then if it's possible to throw in a secondary use to it, such as a crusher spike on the pommel end of a knife, that's great, as long as it doesn't take away from the primary objective of what that knife's supposed to be doing.
Yep.
So, if you're in a situation to where you need a heavy duty utility knife, then you want some a little wider blade, a little longer blade, a little thicker, something a little stronger. Whereas if you're in a hunting situation, where you're going to be hunting, medium size, a large game, you might want a little more compact piece, a little more control on the blade. So as far as which one I'm most proud of, it would be very difficult to say, because they all have their usage and their purpose. So say, which is your favorite hunting knife? Right now, I'd have to say probably the Woodsman. And well, which is your favorite combat? If I were going to go into combat, I would want to carry the drop point crusher, because they are designed to perform best in those environments.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that dovetails into what are you carrying at that moment? What are you carrying now in the interview?
Right now I'm carrying a folding knife that I actually designed for Boker
Hmm.
many years ago, that they just recently in the past year produced. And so I bought several of them through that. And so I'm carrying that right now as a daily carry, but then I also carry fixed blades frequently. And like say, if I'm in a more urban environment and can carry a concealed, then the contingency is a perfect because it conceals extremely well. If I'm out in the field on a hike or something, I like the additional blade length of the field knife or the belt knife. So again, I carry all of those at times, and you know, it again, it depends on the day and the purpose.
Absolutely. Um, this one's a nice question. A fond memory from your childhood related to knives.
Yeah, first knife I ever bought when I was a small child, still in elementary school. I used to do chores around the house. And for the work that I would do, my mother gave me green stamps. And green stamps, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
No.
back a long time in the US, grocery stores, when you bought groceries, you would get green stamps based on how many groceries you bought. And then you put them in a little book and you go to a green stamp store and you would redeem them for gifts and prizes. And
Right.
so I worked real hard and I earned a lot of green stamps. And I went to the green stamp store and I was able to buy a knife.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that was the first knife that I ever acquired on my own and got to pick out and use myself. I have no idea what brand it was. I don't even know where it is now, but that's the first acquisition of cutlery that I ever made on my own.
Uh, you've just thrown me back to my childhood as well. I was the same. I was, I think maybe 10 to 12 years old, and I it definitely sticks in my head, that first one.
Mhm.
um, let's see. This one was interesting. Now I put these questions up. I think 6 weeks ago when we first started to communicate. So this one was, if the Russians are invading or zombies are coming, what knife are you going to grab first?
Biggest one I can get for the zombies, at least. The Russians, you know, quite frankly, I have multiple gear kits set up for different firearms. And on each of these tactical vests, I have the accessories I need that flow well with the firearm that I've got it set up for, including a hatchet, a knife, or a camp knife, or something with both size for like a hatchet and a smaller, more personal protection size knife, such as the belt knife or the woodsman or something. And I set up these kits to where when if I should need it, I can grab it, grab the what goes with it, and just a couple handfuls, I've got everything I need on me, ready to go. And so I set up these kits for myself using our own cutlery, and I test it out. And it's a good way for me to test it, because every time I go out in the field, I'll take something that we've made and just use it as hard as I can, but still yet, generally speaking, within reason. You know, a knife's not a screwdriver,
Yeah.
but if you have to use it for a screwdriver, use it for a screwdriver. No, you're probably going to damage your cutting edge, but you got to get that screw out. You got to get the screw out. So, you know, you can do things like that with the knowledge that, you know, it has a particular purpose. And so I set up my kits that way. And so, but generally speaking, you know, I'll have a knife and maybe one of the screwdriver picks, you know, in with that too. And I developed other tools, and one called a weapon retention tool, is kind of a triangular knuckle kind of thing that we
Yeah.
aren't really producing anymore. There's a little controversy over where it was and wasn't legal. So we have to be a little bit conscious of that, being we have such a wide range of customers now in a lot of different areas. But yeah, so
I must speak to that actually. Another, I don't know if you know him, but Pat McNamara. Um,
mhm.
Pat Mac, he's been a guest on the show, which is great, but he was showing off his knife collection, and that exact blade came up the other day when he was showing it, your weapon retention tool.
Really.
Yeah, and I've looked for it online many times. It's a really interesting piece of equipment.
Well, it is, and we'll still make them on occasion, but only for specific law enforcement or military groups that have a need for that specifically, that we don't have to worry about the legality of their ownership in certain municipalities. You know, living in Australia, you know how there can be regulations that can cause problems that you may not even know about. So
Absolutely.
we try to be conscious of that. We're not trying to control what people can and can't buy. We just have to be realistic about our exposure in legal terms also. So we're pretty selective on some of the specialty equipment we do like that as to where they go to.
So the next one is what prototypes or collabs do you have coming up, and any chance to bring up some older fan favorite models? So I suggest we've gone over the older fan favorite models, but what prototypes or collabs do you have coming up?
Well, unfortunately, for the past 2 years, we've been so busy fulfilling orders for our current products, we've done very little in new product development. But we're beginning to get out of that hole, and we're beginning to start work on new product development. So like I said, I'm working right now on the new pick and screwdriver pick designs that we hope to introduce within the next several weeks. We also have a new smaller hunting knife design that we're working on the development for right now. And so we hope to introduce those within the next 6 months or so. And then our more long-term projects, besides some custom manufacturing, is we want to get into some kitchen cutlery. And so we're looking into that for the future. Some daily use in the house kind of things, because a lot of people want that. And we want to go a little different direction with it, and design some food prep tools for like outdoor grilling that are dedicated to that and designed for that sort of thing. And, you know, a little heavier duty, a little more rustic in design. So we're working in that direction too.
And I guess that's almost a full circle from where you started with. I mean, I get the title for the show, and I started with from a frontiersman. That's really where you sort of started, and you're bringing it into the 2000s.
That is, and even now you can see a bit of that design influence from early American history that goes into what we design and develop now. We rarely get really far out there. In fact, one of the stipulations I put on collaborative designs that I work with is I'm not going to make anything that I wouldn't make and carry and be proud of myself.
Yeah.
So quite frankly, I've had some designs come in back when we were doing custom manufacturers that I just said, you know, that's very nice. I'm glad, you know, you like this, but it's not what we're going to be able to do. And sometimes they go someplace else, and sometimes say, well, what would you change? What would you design? And so we're very strict about that. It's got to be within our design parameters, both in what I feel like is reasonable and functional, and also within we have to design things that fit with our manufacturing processes.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of these knives, and there's a lot of really cool looking stuff out there. And, you know, this one knife will do everything. It'll slice and dice and hammer and chop and saw. You know, if you try to make something that does everything, then it doesn't do anything well.
No.
It does a little bit of everything, but nothing really well. Exactly. So I stick with that design philosophy.
Next one is, any plans for rubber handles to be brought back for the SD1 and field knife?
No. And the reason for that is it's twofold. One, the rubber that we use for handles is made from recycled tires. It's originally made for either horse stall mats or cutting mats or something. The ones we use are cutting mats for other industries. And so we adapt that material to it. But being as recycled, and they take chips of rubber and press it together with adhesives and all, when you cut it out, because we basically have to cut that out with our water jet. The water jet will blow holes because there'll be slight voids here and there, and it'll blow it apart. So we lose 30 to 60% of the handles we cut out due to blowouts, just because of the nature of the material. That makes it kind of costly. That's why a rubber handle now costs more than a regular handle. Another thing on the SD. The SD is another one of those knives like the push dagger and the contingency that are designed to, if the user wanted to be worn as a concealed carry piece. You put a rubber handle on some concealed carry, your shirt doesn't slide over it anymore. It grabs and it prints and it shows a knife. So we won't put it on anything that's designed for concealed carry because it defeats the purpose of not printing and keeping it in a low key way.
And that exact answer epitomizes that attention detail and that quality, but attention detail that, as I said about 15 minutes ago, might save someone's life or help take life in the defense of another. And that's what we rely on.
Yeah. On the rubber handles, though, just a little side note here. And if you look at the GBRS dagger, they like the rubber handle idea, but then there are limitations because it is a flexible material and it'll lift at the corners. You know, the adhesion is only as good as the material you're gluing. So what we did, we developed a way to do a rubber insert in the handle that's completely surrounded. So we've eliminated the problems with the rubber as far as it adhering to the tang and the handle, but you still get the additional grip quality that it provides. And so it could be, we will add that style of handle with a rubber insert to some of our other models in the future as we get time to develop that and see what works. But GBRS daggers are kind of a test of that, and it worked out very well.
Yeah, it's a true combat dagger. I've got so many, as an interviewer, and I can't believe I've gone from special forces operator to fireman to interviewing. You think about so many things. I'm thinking about, you know, the classic commando dagger, the Sykes-Fairbairn knife, and the need for that at the time. And really, you're sort of a renaissance man of doing that, but with all the modern needs and modern materials, which is absolutely kudos to you and shows that the quality of what you're doing. I've got one more question, and then I've done them justice, and I'll close up and talk about where to find you. The last one is, I guess it dovetails into that, is the importance of steel and materials versus the importance of how it's made and who makes it.
Well, the overall quality of a knife and the functionality of it has to be all encompassing. It has to start with the design. You can take the best materials there are, the best steel, the strongest handle material, and if your knife design isn't well thought out and balanced and functional, you still have a clunking piece of junk. It doesn't matter what materials you use. So whenever we do a design development process, we do the whole thing from the beginning. We integrate the materials that are appropriate for it, the carry systems, the tooling holders we have to have for doing our manufacturing processes, you know, the computer programming that goes into this sort of stuff now. It all comes in from the very beginning design concept. And so if you have great knife designs and you skimp on your materials, you're going to have failures.
Yep.
If you have great materials, but you don't have good knowledge on proper knife design, then you have that piece I told you about that's going to stay on the shelf when you go out in the field. So you just got to work it all together. And there's not one particular part of it that is any more or less important than the other. It goes down to the detail and integration of the design, materials, heat treating processes. It all has to work together to produce that knife to where there's not one aspect of it that takes away from another. All of them work together with it. Just like the rubber handle on a concealed carry knife doesn't really work together. So therefore, that's why we don't do it. So yeah, you gotta have it all. You gotta make it. You gotta make it handle well, balance well. It has to be able to be carried and drawn in a well thought out manner. And then you also have to create this out of very well processed materials with the processes that complement those materials rather than deter from them, such as micarta handles or laminate handles that we use now. We use some micartas, we use other laminates that it's like clean, all facial tissue is not Kleenex, but everybody calls it a Kleenex. All laminates are not micarta, but that's a generic term. We use a lot of different brands because we get properties out of them. But instead of polishing those surfaces that makes a slippery handle, we do a blasting process to texture them, so you got a little better grip quality. So that, along with the dark blade finishes and the carry systems that you can wear right-handed, left-handed, vertical, horizontal, behind the back, we try to incorporate a lot of big carry methods with them, so a person can put them in to where it integrates with their gear, their kits. That's all very important, every single aspect of it.
Daniel, I can definitely see why you relate so well to our sort of tribe, because in New Zealand, SAS, we've got 4 tenets, but the first one is the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. And I truly think that you epitomize that in your craft. So I just want to say thank you for that. And yeah, congratulations to you for your success on that.
Well, thank you. We take our work very seriously. Every person that works here is dedicated, and we don't necessarily hire people that have a particular skill level. We hire people that have good work ethic and have a similar mindset and why we're here and what we're doing and who we're doing it for and the importance of that. And so we've been very fortunate. We've got a great crew here. We've got like 20 people working at Winkler Knives now, and they're all just outstanding individuals and work together as a cohesive team and produce what we do without any compromises.
Beautiful. Daniel, winklerknives.com is your main website.
Yes.
Do you have any socials that we should talk about here as well?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Are you on Instagram or anything like that?
Yeah, we have Facebook and Instagram. I'm a little challenged when it comes to social media. So we understand the importance of that, and we'll have people that are better equipped to handle that in the near future, hopefully. And I'll do my part to make it happen. And so yeah, it's all important. But right now we're not really pushing a lot on advancing our product because we're having so much trouble supplying what we've got right now. So we've done no advertising and very limited show appearances at trade shows. Just we got to get a handle on it. We really would like to get our delivery times back from the 5 to 6 months we're at right now to a more reasonable 2 months, hopefully within the next year. And once we do that, then we'll start branching out and looking at other opportunities. We've not even scratched the surface on marketing. No. And so we're not ready for additional business right now, but doing things like this and talking with folks like you that have an audience is good because it helps people understand where we are and why we're here and why we're doing what we're doing, and keeps the information flowing. And so, will this interview help us sell more knives? Well, yeah, probably will. But my purpose for doing it is to clear up misconceptions about who we are and what we're doing, and make sure people understand what our focuses are and where our direction is going to be for the future.
Well, Daniel, thank you. And I hope that I've done your journey justice. Just on the website and in marketing, it's the attention to detail, very, very beautiful website. So people need to go to winklerknives.com. But on that, is there anything else you'd like to talk about with on the show while we've got you here?
I think we've covered it pretty well. You've been very good at doing your research, and the questions that you ask are very direct and pointed and appropriate. I get a lot of questions that I can't answer because of some of the connections that we have, and I appreciate not having to get into telling you why I can't talk to you about that. So that's all good. But we take it very seriously, and we try to stay within the parameters of our elite customers and the professionals and not compromise them in any way. So that's what we all do. And the thing is, there's a lot of books and a lot of information out there that may be derogatory, but until you, and I haven't lived what you have lived through in your special forces career, and a lot of the people that we're supplying knives for, I only know what they ask for and why they need it, and do my best to provide that without encroaching into their personal world. I don't ask questions, I answer questions, and I try to provide what they need. And information that I get is because of trust within the community. And quite frankly, nobody here at Winkler Knives will cross the line and not stay within the parameters that we're committed to.
Well, you definitely answer the question with your work, with your craft, and I know that creative process is so fulfilling. And yeah, again, I just want to say thank you for the quality of what you do. Thank you for the for coming on the interview, and you've been a true gentleman. It's been an honor to interview you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure meeting you. I hope to see you in person sometime down the road when travel opens up a little bit more, and maybe we'll cross paths someplace.
That sounds great. I'd love to do that. Thank you so much, Daniel. I'll hit pause and we'll have a quick chat.
Okay.